Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to Bellemont Zoo. Today we're going to be creating the entrance to the zoo's Africa section, just in front of the baboon habitat here, with two habitats for meerkat and the new African spurred tortoise. Let's go. Alright, this is what we're going to be building today. In the background you can see the Ethiopian rift for the baboons. That will continue round to the Kenyan rift, which we'll get to in a future episode. And today we're going to be building the entrance to the African area itself, with a big habitat for meerkats and another habitat for the African spurred tortoise. Really looking forward to that. The last time I built a dedicated tortoise habitat was a very long time ago, but we're going to start here with the meerkats. Now, meerkat habitats are normally pretty small because, well, meerkats are pretty small. But on a recent visit to Yorkshire Wildlife Park, I was reminded that they've got probably the best meerkat habitat that I've ever seen, and also probably the biggest meerkat habitat I've ever seen. It's split into multiple areas with little tunnels that the meerkats can get between them, and the sheer size of it just means there's always something going on. They've got loads of meerkats there, and they are always getting up to mischief. There's loads of different viewpoints for the guests. You are really close to them, and I was there for absolutely ages watching them getting up to all their hijinks. So that is what we're going to replicate here, and then sit it in an area that is going to be influenced by the entrance to Zoo Leipzig's African area, which is really cool. Loads of standing stones, really immersive. They've got dwarf mongoose and porcupines in there. So we're going to use the meerkats instead of the dwarf mongoose, and I'm going to go with the African spurred tortoise instead of the porcupines. A, because they're new and I'm excited to see them, and B, because porcupines are nocturnal, so they're not the best exhibits anyway. What we're building here is a little meerkat house. It starts off as a direct replica of the one at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, and then we're going to make some changes to it. But its function is to join the two habitats together, so the meerkats have an indoor area and a way to get between the two habitats. It's got a door for the keepers right at the front in between two viewing windows, which is pretty weird. So I'm going to move this inside and to the back. Not really a design choice I would have gone with myself. Not sure why they've done it like that. I've never seen a keeper access door slap bang in the middle of the viewing area. But we start it there and then we'll move it back. We're going to put some rocks down in front of all the mud walls here, just for looks. I've got a thatch roof on there. I'm not happy with that one, so we're going to change that out. I think that's the African thatch, and we're going to change that for, I think, the palm thatch later, just because I think it looks better. And then we'll put some more detailing in. I love these mud walls, the sort of extra details in them with the way the mud's cracked, and there's little bits of grass and stuff if you look closely. They're a really cool piece. Probably don't use them enough, so definitely using those here. We'll get a sort of double effect on the wood here to get a bit more detail into the viewing windows. There'll be two viewing windows next to each other, both identical, so if the meerkats are inside, the guests can see them. And we'll just put some glass in there. Here we go, this is the better thatch. Now it's all flexicolour. You've got a really good choice of thatches in this game. So we're going to use this palm thatch, and then later on we'll darken it so it looks more like, there we go, so it looks more like the reference image that I'm working from. And then we'll position the house in between the two habitats here, and then start getting some cute little doors so that the meerkats can get from one habitat into the indoor area and then into the other habitat. And then we'll start getting some glass in for guest viewing. There's going to be three different types of barrier for this habitat. Firstly, the glass, which will give the guests a really good view of the meerkats and be able to get down and see the meerkats at eye level if they want. Then we're going to have short little walls, which we're making here. So we've got some corrugated iron on the back, which is the meerkat side. And then we're going to have logs on the guest side to make it look more attractive. And we'll vary the height of all of these logs just to give it a unique look. Later on, we're going to make some hot wire and put that on the back of these bits of the barriers using a brand new piece. Excited to get to that in a minute. And the final type of wall that we'll have is some big rock walls, the same ones that we're going to use throughout the African area, just to tie everything in and make everything look cohesive. We'll use these smaller walls as the main barrier on the guest part of it, and just have some glass windows there. And then we'll join those up and then bring those back to join up with the house. The grey breeze blocks you can see here are just my sort of rough guide of how big I want each section of the habitat to be. They'll be going once we've got the basic shape of the habitat in. Then we can start putting in the rock walls. Obviously these will be a lot lower than they are throughout the rest of the area. Don't need a particularly high wall to keep the meerkats in. These rock walls are going to be really useful because it'll enable views into the rest of the area when we want there to be views into the rest of the area, or we can raise them up and prevent views when we've got staff buildings and things like that. There's possibly nothing more useful in Planet Zoo than having a few nice sets of rock walls in your blueprints. This was originally built for the giant panda habitat at San Bernardino Zoo. A couple of weeks ago, it became the area walls for the African area here, and now we're using it to build the back of the meerkat habitat as well. You just need to recolor it, and make sure the original blueprint is good and looks really varied, and you can basically use these everywhere. And now for something new and very cool. So only a few weeks ago I was thinking I wish we had more hanging plants in Planet Zoo, because we've basically got ivy, a couple of others, and they're not always suitable. And then a few days ago, somebody on Bro Nation called Marvin discovered that if you turn the Netaria bush upside down, it becomes a brilliant dry-looking hanging plant, which is absolutely perfect for this African area. So thanks to Marvin, I am stealing that idea immediately, and we will be using that throughout this area. They look so good if you just spin them upside down and then have them hanging over rocks like this. Amazing for desert areas or just variety when you don't want to use an ivy. And then from one new idea to another, it's time to make some hot wire. If you saw the baboons episode, then you will know that we now have a new thinnest piece in the game, the string from the Zookeepers Animal Pack. And we're going to use that and one of the other new pieces, the satin barrier rope, in order to make some hot wire to go around the bottom of this habitat. This is the third time I've made custom hot wire in this game, and each one has been better than the last thanks to the new pieces. I think I used the marquee beam back in the days of Tecton Zoo, then it was the grasslands pole in San Bernardino Zoo, and now we've got the string. We can finally get super thin hot wire, which just looks like a little wire running around the bottom of the habitat to make sure the meerkats don't climb up the walls and escape. Next up is probably one of the most important things from the meerkats' perspective, which is somewhere high for them to get up to and do their sentry duty. So they need a higher place in the habitat so they can climb, stand up on their hind legs and look around, make sure there's no eagles or anything like that coming to eat them. And these are always really tricky to make in Planet Zoo, because in the game the meerkats can't climb, they can only walk up stuff, which makes building something like this that looks good really difficult. So what we're going to do is make sure that from the front this looks pretty much identical to the one they have at Yorkshire Wildlife Park. And then at the back we'll make some changes to make sure that this works just as well in the game as it does in real life. You'll have seen one of the meerkats up here in the intro anyway. At the Yorkshire Wildlife Park, they get up here by climbing up a little log that leans against it in the real zoo, and we're going to replicate that. And then to the side, we're going to build some tiny little meerkat steps so that they can actually get up here in the game. And these will be hidden by some more of this elephant grass. This is replicating some big sprays of reeds that they have at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, and it adds a really nice splash of green to the environment as well. Now, we can't just enable them to get up here, we also need to give them a reason to get up here. So we're going to put this enrichment item in, the little water fountain. And then I always think these are weird because where does the water go? So we're going to put a little vent in as well, so it looks like the water's sort of draining away through this rock and then recirculated and put back out through the fountain or something along those lines. We'll recolor it as well just so it sits in a bit nicer with these rocks and doesn't really stand out from where the guests are. Now, there's a difficulty with the setup that we've got here. We've got two habitats, and the join between the two habitats is a house, but the little doorways are only meerkat size, not keeper size. So in real life, there's loads of different ways you could combat that, but in Planet Zoo, it leaves us with an issue. The keepers will only be able to get to whichever side we put the keeper gate in, and that's going to throw up all sorts of errors if we have stuff like this termite mound in here, because the keepers won't be able to get to it. So we need to make sure that this side of the habitat only has toy enrichment items in it, because the keepers don't need to actually physically touch those to reset them, and the keepers will also magically clean habitats from anywhere. So as long as we get rid of any food related items, they'll have no need to come in here. So what we're going to do is build our own termite mound using the stalagmite pieces. I'm just placing these over this termite mound until we get an approximation of the shape of these pieces, and we get something that looks pretty good. Quite happy with that sat at the back of the habitat. And then we can move over to the other side of the habitat and start getting some of the food in and some more enrichment and climbing and stuff like that, and get this habitat towards finished. So we'll build another high platform for them on this side, and then I'll copy across the stairs that we already built for the other side. And then I'm going to try and solve the problem that I always find with habitats where the floor is just sand. It just looks really bare. And what I found is if you sink in the Oceanian rocks, so there's just like 1 or 2 pixels showing above ground, you get this really random look where it's almost like bits of slate and little bits of rock, and it really helps to bring the habitat to life. I'm going to be doing this a lot more in future. And that's the meerkat habitat done. Let's check out the zoo's latest new arrivals. Our troop of 48 baboons has been very busy and we have finally hit the magic number of 50. The babies are impossibly cute. I really like them. I think we've got 53 baboons in here now. I want to get up to 80 like they have at Singapore. It's going to be an absolute riot in here. On to the main guest area. So we're going to do a little bit of work on this and then we're going to move on and start building the tortoise habitat. There's these big standing stones at Zoo Leipzig in their African area and I want to replicate those here because it's really effective the way they have these just stood around and you sort of walk between them to get into different areas. So we're going to mix loads of the natural rocks together to get some interesting shapes and textures, starting with one of the darker rocks at the bottom and moving up to savanna and desert rocks near the top so we get a nice graduation of colour. So I tried all of them out here and what we're going to end up with is tropical rocks at the bottom as a base and then moving up to, I think it's either the tiger or the temperate rock in the middle for a nice splash of grey, and then moving up to the orange of the savanna rocks towards the top, and finally everything topped off with some of the desert rocks. I want these to be really tall, much taller than the guests. They're going to add a sort of grandeur to the area, which makes a really effective contrast to the tiny little meerkats and the tortoises. We've made a couple of these and we're just going to use these over and again, spun in different angles to start filling out this area, and then we'll fill some of the gaps between them with the bigger rocks that we've been using everywhere. And then we can start building the tortoise habitat. So we're going to use the same elements we used for the meerkats and get a decent size for them. We'll roughen up the terrain and then smooth it to get it more interesting in here. Make sure it dips down a bit so they can get into their house. They're not actually going to be able to get into their house because this is Planet Zoo and they need an absolutely enormous door, which I don't want to build. But we're in sandbox mode now, so they have no actual need for shelter. And as long as it looks like they can get in there, then I'm happy. And you can see we've already got a really nice looking habitat here. Next up is everyone's favourite activity, pathing. Now we've got a massive natural advantage in this area and we're going to be using it to make sure that the pathing is absolutely perfect. And that is that the floor is made of sand. What that means is we can use the natural path, which is also sand, and put the pathing wherever we like. Now to make it easier when we put it in, I'm going to use the tarmac path so we can see exactly where the pathing is going. And what I want to do is make sure that the guests can get absolutely everywhere in this area, but without walking through any of the rocks and without clipping into any of the habitats. So we're going to use different sizes of path and put paths down almost but not quite touching the habitats so that the guests, when they step forward off the path slightly, won't end up going through the fence. And then we'll join each of those up to the main path that goes through the area. And we can even make little windy paths that go around these rocks. You might see them intersecting with the rocks at the moment, but I'll just simply move the rocks so they are in the little gaps between the paths once we're done. We'll just keep doing this around here. We'll get another path going through there. There'll be a little education area there and some seats and stuff. And with that done, we just need to join it on to the baboon area, add in a couple more little bits, and that's the pathing done. We'll keep it tarmac for the moment so that we can see where the gaps are, and we're going to turn these into little plant displays to spruce up the area a bit. Some of the fake rocks to create a flower bed, a little palm, and then it's on to the final part of the build. This is the entrance to the African area, which is going to be absolutely huge when it's finished, so we need to set the scene. So we've got a sign in already in some nice African colours using one of Ricey's fonts, and then we're going to build a little garden here to get everyone in the mood to enter the African area. So again, this is that same set of rocks just sunken down into the ground, and we've still got the upside down Nitaria bushes on it as well, and it really helps to set the African vibe. And now we need to plant it up. So I've got a section of plants here that we built for our Madagascar house. You can even see the ring-tailed lemur sign still there. We'll get rid of that in a second. This has got that sort of dry African vibe that we want. And once we get rid of the sign, we can start moving these plants around, get some nice dry grasses in, a few reeds, got a few more European plants in there as well, because we are in Europe after all. And once we've finished putting all of this together, getting a nice little garden, we don't want anything too crazy, just some yellows and some greens, then that's everything we need to do to open the African area. Let's check it out. Here's one of our meerkats up on the enrichment. I love the way you can still see the European houses in the background across this African area. There's our sign with our tortoises. You can see how the meerkat can get up onto that rock and then back down again through the little steps that we made. And from here you can see across into the other side of the meerkat habitat and the baboon habitat. And here's an overview of the whole area. Very pleased with this. There's a lot of yellows and browns going on in the colours, but I think the splashes of green here and there really bring it to life. Let's check out the tortoises. The models on these guys are so good, so much better than the tortoises we already have in the game. Kind of makes them look a bit embarrassing, to be honest. And here's our meerkats. I don't know how many meerkat habitats I've built, quite a lot, but I always enjoy doing it because I just love watching them run around in the habitats that we make for them. Here's where we started today, and here is where we are now. This African area starting to look big, but believe me, it is going to get a whole lot bigger. Next week, we're going to be returning to the Madagascar house to start building something on the huge lawn in front of it. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much to all of you who've joined the Explorers Club. And if you want to see your name in the zoo, then hit the join button on the channel, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.